you are just super busy. And once again, you're here on a Saturday to provide training to us. And folks, I want to say that by now we figured out this is a special time. We really need the skills to cultivate leadership. And on the other hand, if we really love the trainings National provides, let's all donate. Even $5 is a donation. So Alicia, do you want me to run the slides?
Yes, please. I would really appreciate it if you could run the slides. And then the other request that I hope is going to be okay is I wanted to do 2 rounds of pair share where people stay with their same person if possible. But is that going to be okay?
Nathan?
We break out into pairs for about 6 minutes and we do that twice. Will that be okay, Nathan?
I'll try.
Is it possible to do? Are you able to do breakouts?
Yes, but I mean, I won't be able to individually assign pairs. There's just too many people. I'll do the random one.
Random is fine.
Hopefully it'll be maintained afterwards.
Yeah. It's not critical. If the first round and the second round, if someone's with a different person, that works out fine too.
Okay.
Yeah. That's totally fine. But you are able to do breakouts where people go into pairs, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. That's really the only thing that matters. That would be perfect. Okay, is it okay if I start, Hoyan?
Yes, I have it up.
Great, thank you so much. So hello, my name is Alicia Ybarra. I use she and they pronouns. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and my title is Training Director. I work at the national organization. And today we're talking about strategy for cultivating leadership with a specific focus on recruiting and developing volunteers, because there's obviously a lot of things that we could talk about under the title of cultivating leadership. But today we're focusing on recruiting and developing volunteers. And just a quick overview of the flow of the hour together is I'm going to ask you for some self-reflection, a little bit of journaling, and then we'll move into a pair share. And this is so that we can benefit from the experience and knowledge that you're bringing to this session. So it's very, very participatory, hoping that you'll be willing to share and to participate. And then I'm going to be offering a tool called the Leadership Ladder, which is a tool for cultivating leadership for recruiting and developing volunteers. Then I'll do a bit of talking. I'll run through some slides that has really specific action steps and some tips for developing volunteers. And that's the overall flow of this session. And I think we can move on to the next slide. So one of what we call operating assumptions. So one of the operating assumptions about this session is that it is a core leadership responsibility to identify, recruit, and develop new leaders on an ongoing basis as a way of building the power of our organization. So I wanted to ask you to think about that statement for a minute, and then I wanted to have a brief discussion about what you all think about that. Is that how you think about leadership, that one of your, like you specifically, one of your core responsibilities is to identify, recruit, and develop new leaders on an ongoing basis as a way of building power for the organization? So would love to hear from you if you'd like to raise your hand, and then Hoyan maybe could unmute you, or Nathan, and just briefly share what you think about this as one of our assumptions that we're using in this session, or about leadership. Great. Stacy, please go ahead. I'm hoping that either you can unmute yourself or that you can be unmuted.
Yeah, I think I can unmute myself. I think that this statement is entirely false. I think that we are not recruiting new leaders because there's a power structure in place that wants to protect itself. And I witnessed this and am victim of this in a big way in the Angelus chapter. And I know that Nathan had mentioned earlier about a complaint that was filed a year ago. And this is really at the heart of it, aside from the misogyny and the bullying and the sexism and all of that. But I think that this is entirely antithetical to what is happening in the chapters. And if this is what we're supposed to be doing, then somebody needs to take a real hard, heavy look at what's going on in the Angelus chapter, because this is completely antithetical to what's going on.
Thank you, Stacy. I really appreciate what you're saying. I think that you're right, that's one of the reasons that we're doing trainings like this one specifically, is because we're trying to change that culture of exactly what you said, of power wanting to protect itself. And one of the core things that we need to do is to learn how to and be willing to share power, to create roles of consequence for new and upcoming leaders, so that they can see themselves as part of our organization. So,
well, yeah, and I agree with that, Alicia, except that in my case, in the Angelus chapter, not only did they halt membership to committees, they essentially chased a group of people away that just didn't want to deal with the politics of all of it, and the I mean, just I'm happy to share emails and text messages that I have from people that said they're never coming back. They're not even going to give the Sierra Club a second chance because their memberships were completely ignored and in some cases denied into committees that they chose to serve on. And the result of that was the XCOM was given the authority to completely dismantle the committee and build it back in the way that they wanted it to be, similar to what Tennessee tried to do in their House of Representatives. Like, we don't want you here, so we're going to deny you a voice and a membership, and we're going to build this back the way that we want to build it. And that's exactly what is currently happening in the political committee of the Angelus chapter. And these were leaders that were brought
Stacy,
in.
just want to say that, but we've got 5 minutes for the whole discussion, and you're
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's
All right.
okay.
So
Thank you.
So could you wrap up? And thanks.
Oh, no, I'm done. I'm done. Anybody who wants to talk to me, you can hit me up on Twitter or Facebook, and happy to share.
Thank you, Stacy. I do appreciate what you shared. I appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm going to call next on. The next person that appeared in the queue is Pamela. And I hope I'm saying your name correctly.
I spelled it wrong, so that's not your fault.
Okay.
It is Pamela, and I don't know how it came up as Pamela because I don't spell it that way. But anyway, I think a problem too here, and I'm going to have to agree it with Stacy. I'm in South Carolina. If your core leadership, if your leadership itself is not on, they don't know how to lead well. They lead the best that they know how to do, but need further training before they can identify and recruit and develop new leaders. Because what happens is that the new leaders that come in behave as the former leaders, and so the obstacles get built in into the system, but from the older leaders to the new ones. Am I making sense?
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, this is a good ideal, but I think we need to come back to a reality for some chapters that are the leadership is not able to develop new leaders.
Right. Agreed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call on 2 more people and then we're going to move on. So go ahead, Steve. I think you're still on mute. I cannot hear you. Why don't you try one more time?
All right.
Go
How's
ahead.
this?
Yes.
Uh, I have heard that other organizations limit the time that people can serve in a leadership position to 2 years, and that results in a good turnover and the building of more depth than when we have people that lead for decades.
Agreed. Thank you so much for sharing that. I had another person with their hand up, but they disappeared, so I think they changed their mind. So let's go ahead and wrap up the conversation about this particular assumption. Thank you so much. And let's move on to the next slide. All right, so here's where we're going to ask you to do some self-reflection and the pair share. First, think back to a time before you were involved with the Sierra Club. How exactly did you first become involved? So this is inviting you to tell your story briefly. So first, think about it and journal, a little piece of paper, write down some of the things you remember about how you first became involved with the Sierra Club. And I'll put a timer for maybe like 2 minutes since we're behind a little bit. And then we're going to ask you to go into a pair share and share your story. So I'm going to set a timer. So we're journaling right now, or just thinking about what we want to share with our partner when we move into the pair share. So you got 1 more minute. So we're not asking you to share in the chat right now. There was a question in the chat. We're going to put you in a breakout with one other person, and that's where you'll share. Okay, great. So go ahead and finish up what you're writing. And now we're going to move into breakout sessions where you're going to be with one other person. You'll have 6 minutes. So it's just 3 minutes per person. You're just briefly sharing the story of how, really specifically, how you became involved in Sierra Club right at the beginning when you first became involved. And then when we come back, we're going to try to identify what do people's experiences have in common that we might learn from. So whenever, Nathan, whenever you're ready, we can move people into pair share for 6 minutes.
Hold on, I unfortunately I had to manually assign the room, so I'm just.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot of people to manually.
Yeah, so that's why I've been furiously working, but we're ready to go. Here we go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Great. So welcome back. I'm sorry if you didn't get a partner. Not everybody seemed to join the breakout, so I'm so sorry if you were by yourself, but hopefully most people had a partner. What we'd like to do now is just to see who, take a few people who would like to share. We see one person's hand is up already. That's great. Any highlights from the conversation that you had? Anything that you all had in common about what helped you first become involved? So I'm going to call on Jim and then on Karen.
Well, Karen Rocky and I just agreed that the way we became involved was through someone asked us. And I mean, I can go on, on the details, but the second thing that we agreed on was, why did we stay involved? And maybe that's your next question.
It is.
We agreed that we stayed involved because this group, the Sierra Club, gave us purpose in life.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's perfect. Thank you for sharing that. Go ahead, George.
Yes, one of the things we talked about was the importance of being able to reach out to members and being able to ourselves be involved, because people reached out to us. And the fact that we lost our ability about a year and a half ago to have email lists for our members has totally restricted our reaching out to members and developing leadership within our own groups to make for timely notices. I mean, when city council meetings are noticed on Friday for a Tuesday meeting, we need to be able to reach out immediately through email. And then when they're canceled the night before, we need to be able to tell our members, but we need to be able to see who shows up and speaks and supports the efforts to challenge different projects. And we're able to do that when we have our email list, which was denied by National, which has totally frustrated our group in developing new members and new leaders, and hopefully it can change.
Thank you, George. I'm sorry, I was not aware about the email denial by Nationals. I agree, email is a fantastic way to do outreach. Go ahead, Joan.
Yeah, in the late 60s, I joined the Sierra Club, and in 1970, a project was proposed near where I live in Palm Springs, in the ancestral land of the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians. And it was a bad project, affected Indian land. And actually the then tribal chairman, one of many wonderful ones I've known, invited me to become involved. And he said, you can speak for the Sierra Club. We're both members. It was kind of informal at the time, but that got me going. And I think what's kept me going is the wonderful people that I've worked with, not only in the club, volunteers and amazing staff, but outside the club. In the Desert Renewal Energy Conservation Plan, it was 8 years of agony, but with a team of environmental NGOs that were just stellar. It was a wonderful time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Mary, I'm going to call on the three people whose hands are up now, and then we're going to move on. Mary Ann?
Thank you. Lynn Bolton and I talked for a long time, it's felt like, about how we both joined, and there were two different things. Lynn had an issue that she got involved in the bobcat hunting ban in California and brought that to Sierra Club and then stayed involved. And I just wanted to take a hike with some people, and I knew about Sierra Club from the time I was a kid, and but I'd never really been active. So in 2000, I started hiking, and then someone else before me said, somebody asked me, well, would you become a hike leader? And then would you be our group program chair? And then it just sort of went on and on. And I've been involved for 24 years now. So
that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Steve? I'm sorry, Steve, we still can't hear you. You might be on mute.
You can hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
My first experience also was in the outings. I was involved with the rock climbing section when it still existed. And I think that that's the best way we can get to know people and get people interested in the club.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Mike?
Yeah, it was interesting. We were about the same age, and I didn't write the woman's name down, but I did write down Bruce Collier. That's the guy that she married. He was the chair of the Los Angeles chapter, and she had joined the chapter. She told me to meet a guy. It was a good place to meet men. Is what she told me that she'd heard. Now I just met a woman, and I was interested in being an environmentalist and Sierra Club, and I was in my mind it was very expensive. Even though I was an engineer, I was paying off my college debts, and I thought, well, after that, maybe I'll join the Sierra Club. The woman that I met, she actually belonged to the Sierra Club, and so you know how it is. We have 5 grandchildren now, and so somewhere along the line, I found myself a member of the Sierra Club.
Thank you so much. That's a beautiful story. I'm gonna just summarize what we all shared. There was I loved that the first answer was that someone asked, because that's one of the things I wanted to convey in this session, is that making the ask and escalating the ask, meaning asking people to take on more and more responsibility, is one of the keys, is that there has to be an ask. As that's one of the most common ways that people report getting involved in something. There was also the ability to do outreach, and I can't really address the email issue, but the ability to have an outreach program that's going on a regular basis. And the other way was someone facing a problem or an issue that they wanted to work on, and seeing the Sierra Club as a vehicle for them to be able to work on that issue or problem that they're facing. And then the 2 things that spoke to remaining involved had to do with purpose, finding purpose, which we will also talk about in a minute, and also the social connection, like actually finding your life partner as part of in the environment where you're doing your activism. That's how it happened for me as well. And that's a beautiful aspect of the work that we do, the involvement and activism that we have. So I'm so sorry, Yvonne. I think in the next section, it's similar to this question. You'll have a chance to contribute. I did read what you put into the chat. So I think we're ready for the next slide and the next pair share. And so this one isn't so much, it's about why you stayed, but it's more specific than that. It's about how did your leadership grow? Like, why did you decide not just to stay, but to become a leader, like to take on more and more responsibility? What was that journey like for you? And what was the most helpful thing to you as your leadership and level of responsibility in the Sierra Club grew over time? So again, I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes, asking you to think about that question and what you would want to share with your partner. And if you are willing to journal, or that's a thing that you like doing, please go ahead and use the minutes to jot down some notes for yourself. So I'm going to set a timer now for 2 minutes. He's got about 20 more seconds. Okay, great. So hopefully, Nathan, that was enough time for you to do all the stuff you needed to do to get people ready to go into pair share. So whenever you're ready, we can open up the breakout rooms.
All right.
Really appreciate it.
Al, are you looking for a partner? Okay, let me see if I can assign you to this room. Wait. Looks like I can't. Can you open the breakout room tab and join room 26? Kathy doesn't have a partner in there. I can't physically do it for you. Are you trying to say something? Because I see your mouth moving, but
Okay.
So we're going to start our debrief. I hope that was good for you all. We had a couple people who stayed in the main room and did their breakout here. So thank you for that too. Got to listen in. So taking now some highlights from your conversation so that we can learn from each other about what was most helpful to you in terms of having your leadership grow within the Sierra Club. And I have one hand up already. Karen, go ahead.
I guess what I would say is being a leader with the Sierra Club has been just so fulfilling for me. I mean, it's improved my skills, my personal confidence. I've met a lot of elected officials that I would have never met otherwise. I mean, I'm an introvert, but as being involved with the club, I kind of just tell myself, look, you got to speak up. You know, the forest needs you, the climate needs you. There's no, you know, it's really not going to be helpful if you just sit back. And I think the other thing is I often have a vision of what to do and how it needs to be done. And so I want to go forward and do it. So it's, I guess, and the short answer is it's just really been very, very fulfilling.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. Since Yvonne had her hand up last time and wasn't able, and we ran out of time, I'm going to call on Yvonne next and then Steve. Go ahead, Yvonne.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it short.
Great.
My leadership was trial by fire. I was kind of thrown into it with no prior experience or any kind of any kind of training, and which actually was an advantage because I was able to go into communities of color where I was working with previous allies on environmental justice and listen to them with a much more open mind to the way they did things. And it gave me a lot more street credibility, that they could see that I was really trying to incorporate the Jemez principles and environmental justice principles into everything I did. So that was a really good experience for me. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the mentorship that I got from other organizations, because I think it gives a much broader perspective of what our allies, how they see things and how they operate.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yvonne. Go ahead, Steve.
Yes, I became the chair of our local group because someone asked me to. I'm not sure that I would have joined the group if I'd realized that I was going to be asked to chair it. But I did, and then I moved on to chair another committee because I was asked. So it was pretty much a matter of somebody needing somebody to do it, and they called upon me.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call on two more people before.
Alicia,
sorry, go ahead.
it seems like we're running out of time. I would suggest people really keep your statements within 30 seconds. And if you spoke before, please let other people speak.
Okay. I'm going to call on Becky then. I don't think Becky has spoken yet. And then we can.
I would agree with everything Karen said in double, except I would never believe she was an introvert. But I think the two things I think most is being asked, but also I was really lucky when I got involved with the club over 50 years ago. Women were not that much involved in the leadership of the club. And I had some really good mentors who were older men. And I really appreciated them guiding me through things, and a couple of times getting me appointed to civic committees and commissions as their alternates. So it was a valuable lesson to be active in the club, but also to be guided within the city government. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone who participated. I really appreciate it. This really is, hearing from you all is the most important part for me of any kind of training, and including this session. So I really appreciate that. And I think I'm going to run through, not too quickly, but we have a little bit of time left, run through the slides that I brought to share with you all in terms of tools. So I think we can move on to the next slide. So here's the ladder of engagement that we wanted to share with you. As you can see, it starts with joiners. So those are people who just become aware through our outreach program of the Sierra Club and the activities that we're doing locally and decide to try us out. And then we move on to people who take on tasks, who take on discrete areas of responsibility that are limited, so it's not too extensive, but they're willing to do stuff. And sometimes that starts with online, clicking, and sometimes it starts with local activities. And then we move on to role takers and people who are willing to take on a bigger role of responsibility. And then we move on to, and we're going to go over this a couple more times. We move on to leaders. So people who take on significant responsibility as well as leadership developers. So in this leadership tool, those people who take on the responsibility of bringing in and developing more leaders are really the highest form of leadership. And so that's a quick overview of what's called the GASP ladder of engagement and the different stages that volunteers go through. And hopefully you can identify with parts of this in your own journey. So let's move on to the next slide. And here it comes with a little bit of notes. So similar to what I was just saying, joiners are people who decide to affiliate with us, take on a little bit of responsibility. It's our responsibility to make ourselves known, to advertise, to have an outreach program so that people have the opportunity to grow, to join us and to grow. And it's also really important for us to have a program of activities, a program of actions, campaigns, real work that we're doing so that we have something for people to join. And that is not just a series of meetings that we're having, but actual campaign work and partnerships with local entities. And then there are task doers. So those that commit to do a specific action at least one time. And then there are, of course, role takers, which is a much higher level of engagement beyond just interest. They've made a certain level of commitment, although it's of course limited. And then there is leaders. So those are people who've taken on a more serious commitment. They organize and plan actions for the role takers. the task doers and the joiners. And then at the top level is the highest form of leadership, which is people who think of themselves as it's their responsibility to pass the baton to others, to always be bringing in new people, to always be developing, mentoring, and coaching new leaders, and to create roles that are really significant and have consequence to them that really require leadership. And this means that the people who are in the leadership section, the yellow, that they come to understand that it's important to share power and to pass the baton. So the next slide. And you can tell I'm talking a little bit fast because we've got about 10 minutes. And here we talk about what people need in order to move up the ladder of engagement. They need emotional support, moral support, they need training and tools, and they also need time to do debriefs. Like after someone does an activity with us, it's really important for us to take the time to debrief with them, to have time for reflection. In terms of context, this is where we talk about the overall vision of the work that we're doing. What is it that we're trying to build? What kind of society, what kind of world are we trying to build together? And so that's the ladder of engagement. You're going to get these slides. You'll be able to look at them more at your leisure. But right now we're going to move on to the next slide. And so here are some direct motivators. So people, and some of you spoke to this in terms of play, purpose, and potential. Finding work that you enjoy, believing in the greater outcome, the vision of the organization, the kind of world that we're trying to build, starting locally, and the work as a step towards personal growth goals. And then this quote here is, I underlined create the conditions, because the point is that in our work, we can't motivate people directly. Like you can't give someone motivation, but you can create the conditions in your organization that inspire people, that people see themselves in their work. They see pathways for their own leadership to grow. They see opportunities for engagement because you have a real robust program of things that people can hook into, can connect to, can plug into. So how are you as a leader creating conditions where others can become motivated and stay motivated? And if we had a longer session, this would be another discussion that we would have as a group, but we're going to move on to the next slide. But it's something for you all to think about. And then some really specific action steps that I wanted to share is to develop you can develop a list of available tasks for brand new volunteers, set a low bar that people can get involved, but they're not having to make a really big commitment. There's just stuff that they can do. Also develop a list of roles for more experienced leaders. And this takes more intentionality. It takes power sharing, build a list of new people and identify volunteers who could give them a friendly check-in call. Take it upon yourself to always be doing one-on-ones with new leaders. And this one, I'm a little bit tentative to share it now since there have been some issues around email, but email is usually a very good way to stay in touch with your volunteers and to let people know what you're up to. You could recruit and train greeters for your next event. Those greeters are not just responsible for making sure that new people have a positive experience when they come, but they can also be responsible for following up with the new people and finding out how they felt about what happened and inviting them to the next event. Have an onboarding process. Create an onboarding process for how you bring in how you welcome volunteers and how you help them connect to work that needs to get done. Have a culture of appreciation where you send out thank you notes. And pay attention to the leadership and support that leadership development and support that your XCOM members need. Next slide, please. And then think about how you identify new leaders. What are ways that you would say that how you know that someone is potentially going to be a good leader for your organization? And here are some tips, which I'm not going to read, about how to do that. But think about what makes me think that somebody would be a good new leader, that I'm going to commit to connecting with them and helping them stay connected to the organization. So always identifying new leaders is a key role. Next slide. And then some recruitment tips. Use a combination of basic outreach methods, but remember that face-to-face or one-to-one, if it has to be virtual, is by far the most direct and generally the most effective way to recruit and develop new people. That one-on-one time is invaluable. Build a recruitment pitch. And it has some bullet points there of what could go into your pitch, like have a way of describing your vision for what the organization is doing and what you're trying to build together. Next slide. And then here are some things about being more inclusive and being more equitable. If you feel like your organization is not diverse enough, that you're hoping to connect better and more with frontline communities and frontline organizations, here is something that you could think about. Start with an assessment. Sometimes we think we lack members from certain communities when we actually are getting some foot traffic into our organization, but people are not sticking around. So why do we think that is? Why do we have a retention problem? And it can be helpful to look for barriers. What are some structural or cultural barriers that might be preventing other people from other communities from joining us? Is our leadership reflective of the communities where we're looking to do work? Are our meetings and activities at a time of day when working people can join? And our locations, are we having our activities in various locations, or is our location difficult to get to? Are we exercising language justice, where we're offering our materials in the languages that are spoken in the communities where we want to do our work, for example? Invest in partnerships. What about like-minded groups that already attract the kinds of people we're interested in? Can we connect with them more intentionally? Is there an opportunity to partner with them on an event or on a campaign or another activity? So that's a way of expanding the base of people who are coming to join us in our work. Next slide, if it's not the last slide. Okay, and then obviously recognition. Celebrating and recognizing our volunteers on an ongoing basis is also super important. To say thank you, to provide snacks and meals, to feature people who have done stuff for the organization, to provide programs where people can get awards or certificates of accomplishment. We do that quite a bit in training programs. And then social events to strengthen the group's community. We talked about the power of the feeling of belonging and purpose. And I think our next slide is our last slide. Just the reminder of the power of connection, that people will come to the Sierra Club because they care about an issue or they're experiencing a problem, but they will stay because they care about you, they care about the people they've met, they care about the community that we're building together. So I'll stop there. And if it's okay with you, Ian, we can wrap up, or if I have a couple of minutes, I could take one or two other comments or questions.
Should I stop sharing?
Yes.
You can start taking questions. Let's keep it under 30 seconds, folks.
So anybody want to share something that they have found is helpful, or if you have a question or a comment, we can take that now. We have just like 3 minutes. Oh, go ahead, Shruti.
First of all, thank you, Alicia, for this really excellent presentation. And I just wanted to lift something you said towards the end, retention. How do we retain people? And I think in my own experience, just wanted to share this thought. I personally believe making everyone feel valuable is really important, so they feel that they are welcome in the space and that they can contribute. And when we talk about engaging communities that represent diversity, then meeting people where they are, going into where those communities are, or building strong allyship and partnerships with other organizations that may represent those diverse communities is also a great way to make those connections, to work with them. So just wanted to lift that up, and thank you again.
Thank you too. Thank you so much. George?
Yes, I just wanted to also mention, besides limiting us from email addresses, we also no longer get our membership telephone numbers. So both of those limit us in producing and growing our leadership. And I hope board members will take this to heart and try to make a change in this. Thank you.
Thank you too, George. Bill?
Yeah, it's just a caution about going out and recruiting from other organizations. Be sure that you're seen as helping them and building their own organization, and don't go right in there first thing and ask them, please come join our organization. They might not be happy with that poaching.
Yes, thank you. That is a really good caution, and that's not what we intended to convey. More about community partnerships. Thank you so much for that, though. That was important to say. And Hoyen, I think we're out of time here, so I'm going to hand it back to you.
Well, we actually do have a question in the Q&A. Can I
Oh.
read? Okay, so Alicia, yes, recruiting new, younger, and more diverse leaders when your leadership is almost all white, older, takes really conscious design and efforts. I guess it's a comment.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And taking a hard look at our leadership and what it's going to take to diversify our own leadership is also something I think that's really necessary.
All right, it's 12:35. Do you have one last tip for us?
I guess the thing I want to emphasize is that a couple things. One is the ask. You're not going to get participation very much if you don't have regular asks that escalate and a program of activities that people can come to. And then super important is to share power, create real roles for people that they can step into that creates that leadership ladder.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll see you around. Bye. All right, folks, we have a break.